Tato Jaya Mudiraya Nasta Prayeshu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Gnayastaki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we first offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, unto Narayana Rishi, the supermost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, by rendering service to the pure devotees, all that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed to practically nil. And thus, loving service unto the glorious Lord, who is praised with transcendental hymns, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 1, the first steps in God realization. Text number 5, is it 5?
5.
Tasmat Bharata Savatma Bhagavan Ishwaro Hari Sotvabhya Kirtitwabhyascha Smotvabhyas Chechatabayam Tasmat Bharata Savatma Bhagavan Ishwaro Hari Tvabhya Kirti Tvabhyascha Smotvabhyas Chechatabayam Tasmat Bharata Savatma Bhagavan Ishwaro Hari Sotvabhya Kirti Tvabhyascha Smotvabhyas Chechatabayam
Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishwaro Harihi Srotvya Kirti Tavyascha Smartavayas Chechatabayam
Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishwaro Hari Sotobha Kirti Tavyascha Smartavayas Chechatabayam
Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishwaro Hari Sotvabhya Kirti Tvabhyascha Smotvabhyas Chechatabayam
Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma Bhagavan Ishwaro Hari Srotvya Kirti Tavyascha Smartavayas Chechatabayam Tasmat Bharata Sarvatma
Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari. Svatvagyatityavyascha. Smatvagyatchitavayam. Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma. Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari. Svatvagyatityavyascha. Smatvagyatchitavayam.
Tasmad Bharata Swaratma.
Tasmad Bharata Sarvatma. Bhagavan Ishvaro Hari. Svatvagyatityavyascha. Smatvagyatchitavayam. Tasmad. For this reason. Bharata. O descendant of Bharata. Sarvatma. The super soul. Bhagavan. The supreme personality of Godhead. Ishvaraha. The controller. Hari. The Lord. Who vanquishes all misery. Sravabhya. Is to be heard. Kirtitwabhyaha. To be glorified. Cha. Also. Smatvabhya. To be remembered. Cha. And Ichchata. Of one who desires. Abhayam. Fearlessness. Oh, no, they translated different. Freedom. Yeah, Abhayam is fearful. I saw it happen, I just thought it was fearlessness. Okay, translation. O descendant of King Bharata. One who desires to be free. From all misery. Must hear about. Glorify. And also remember. The personality of Godhead. Who is the super soul. The controller. And the savior. From all misery. Srila Prabhupada's divine purport. In the previous verse, Sri Sukadeva Goswami has described how the foolish materially attached men are wasting their valuable time and improvement of the material conditions of life by sleeping, indulging in sex life, developing economic conditions, and maintaining a band of relatives who ought to be vanquished in the air of oblivion. Being engaged in all these material activities, the living soul entangles himself in the cycle of the law of fruitive actions. This entails the chain of birth and death and the 8,400,000 species of life, the aquatics, the vegetables, the reptiles, the birds, the beasts, the uncivilized man, and then again the human form, which is the chance for getting out of the cycle of fruitive action. Therefore, if one desires freedom from this vicious circle, then one must cease to act as a karmi, or enjoyer of the results of one's own work, good or bad. One should not do anything either good or bad, on his own account. One must execute everything on behalf of the Supreme Lord, the ultimate proprietor of everything that be. This process of doing work is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 27, also where instruction is given for working on the Lord's account. This process of doing work is recommended in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 27 also, where instruction is given for working on the Lord's account. Therefore, one should first of all hear about the Lord. When one has perfectly and scrutinizingly heard, one must glorify his acts and deeds, and thus it will become possible to remember constantly the transcendental nature of the Lord. Hearing about and glorifying the Lord are identical with the transcendental nature of the Lord. And by so doing, one will be always in the association of the Lord. This brings freedom from all sorts of fear. The Lord is the Supersoul, Paramatma, present in the hearts of all living beings. And thus, by the above hearing and glorifying process, the Lord invites the association of all his creation. The process of hearing about and glorifying the Lord is applicable for everyone, whoever he may be. And it will lead one to the ultimate success in everything which one may be engaged by providence. There are many classes of human beings: the fruitive workers, the empiric philosophers, the mystic yogis, and ultimately the unalloyed devotees. For all of them, one and the same process is applicable for achieving the desired success. Everyone wants to be free from all kinds of fear, and everyone wants the fullest extent of happiness in life. The perfect process for achieving this, here and now, is recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is uttered by such a great authority as Srila Sukadeva Goswami. By hearing about and glorifying the Lord, all of a person's activities become molded into spiritual activities, and thus all conceptions of material miseries become completely vanquished. By hearing about and glorifying the Lord, all of a person's activities become molded into spiritual activities, and thus all conceptions of material miseries become completely vanquished. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport to the 5th verse, 1st chapter, 2nd canto, Srimad Bhagavatam, the first steps in self-realization. So although it's the first steps in self-realization, Srila Prabhupada has given us the conclusion in his purport. Of course, it's certainly hinted at in the verse, more than hinted at it. It's directly spoken right there in the verse. So, but it's the first step for the neophyte. I mean, how can us beginners have such faith as the pure devotee? Their faith isn't blind, but it's open to Krishna consciousness. Whereas the beginner's faith is very weak. There may not even be any faith. they may have just had some attraction for devotees, or some relative or friend, some well-wisher in their life. Maybe they are a devotee or became a devotee, and so there's some influence there. But that person's, their very own faith is very weak. Therefore, they're a neophyte. They may be a prominent person, or they may not be a prominent person. They may be anywhere in life, but due to not having faith or having weak faith, one's just a beginner in devotional life, in Krishna consciousness. Even a yogi or a Vedantist who doesn't have faith in the personality of Godhead is a devotee. They're a beginner. They may be a transcendentalist, someone who understands that the self is transcendental to this material creation, to our material bodies. But without faith in Krishna, they're just a neophyte devotee. Now, by a little faith, they can make rapid progress, because those folks are generally always on the Brahma-Bhuta platform. That Brahma-Bhuta platform is beyond the modes of material nature. So they're not affected by duality. Just like Sukadeva Goswami could stay within his mother's womb, because he's unaffected by the duality. He didn't really want to mix with this material world, which is a place of duality. So he didn't have any appetite for it. So he chose a more austere situation. He was just going to stay within his mother's womb. I don't know, if he had any plan, but he wasn't coming out of the womb until he heard Srimad Bhagavatam, and everything became worthwhile. He could understand the purpose of this temporary creation. Otherwise, it seems that the purpose of the temporary creation is sense enjoyment, suffering, and death. And what transcendentalist wants to be involved with such a world where it fools you to think there's some sort of happiness, some sort of love, but in reality it all dwindles and dies, and we experience just the opposite, misery. So what transcendentalist wants to be a part of such a illusory existence? It has no basis in reality. Those folks they're already aloof from all that. But without the shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, they themselves don't have any real support. They're just absorbed in Brahman, or the spiritual energy, the all-pervasive, as Krishna says in the last verse of the 14th chapter. I am the basis of this all-pervasive, inexhaustible, and imperishable Brahman. That all-pervasive light that everything is coming from. Krishna is the basis of it. And just being absorbed in it may bring us an eternal Brahmananda, or a form of spiritual pleasure, bliss. But that shelter is not permanent for the living entities, because of our needs. As a living being, we have a need. We have a desire. And consequently, that needs to be fulfilled. Our needs need fulfillment. If our needs aren't fulfilled, we become very frustrated. So, without Krishna's lotus feet, without the shelter of Krishna's lotus feet, the great jnanis or thinkers and great yogis, they'll leave this Brahman platform and they'll come down into the world again to fulfill their need or their desire. And they'll generally take the position of great philanthropists, people who do good for others, because they don't have any bad desire. They just have a need to fulfill their desire. And so, not knowing where else to do that, due to not having faith in Krishna, they come down and try to fulfill their needs in this world. So, of course, that's not permanent. And the problem with that is that it's not all good karma. There's also bad karma. We can take the example of King Nriga. King Nriga was a very great king, governor, leader of people. And he did everything to serve people. He was perfect, practically speaking, at his activities, his duties. And he amassed a huge amount of pious credit. All of his karma was so good. It was excellent. But he accidentally made a mistake. And due to that mistake, he had a reaction. You know, just like he was getting reactions for all of his good work, he was getting better and better results all the time. But due to this one little mistake, now there was this reaction. And so when he left the world, Yamaraj said, "You have such good karma, I don't know when it will come to an end. But you have this one mistake that you made, and sometime along the line, that result's going to come. So, when would you like to experience that?" And he said, "I'd like to experience that right away, because then I won't have to worry about it in the future." So Yamaraj granted him his request, and he suddenly became a lizard in a dried up well. He, because he was so good and so pious, such a good person, he was blessed that he could remember his past life. And he also, he wasn't an ordinary person. It wasn't like he was blind to Krishna. Krishna was there, and he performed regular sacrifice and worship. And so he realized that this was actually the perfection of life. What have I done? I had the opportunity to just fix my mind on Krishna, and instead I was more concerned with the results of fruitive work. So in this miserable condition, he began to fix his mind on Krishna. And by the arrangement of providence, he took his birth as a lizard in that dried up well, but very close to where the Yadu kings lived. And Krishna is the prince of the Yadu dynasty, so all of his children were playing. And they saw the lizard in the well, and they couldn't get him out. So they went to their father, Krishna, and they told Krishna, "There's a lizard in a well, and he can't get out, and he's dying of thirst." So Krishna came there and took the lizard out. But when he touched the lizard miraculously assumed a transcendental form. And there was this conversation between King Nriga and Krishna. And King Nriga became a pure devotee and left this world. So, but the moral of the story is that despite doing really good fruitive work, in this world, there's always the possibility of a mistake. Is conditioned beings, or is very small souls who are covered by the material energy, we always have the possibility of making a mistake or or having an illusion. We're thinking one thing and it's something else. That just happened to me a couple of days ago. I was thinking one thing and it was a completely different thing. It was just my illusion. I thought something, but that it wasn't the right thing. I can't remember what it is now, but somebody was there and they informed me, no, it's like this. I said, yeah, it sure is. I was mistaken there. So, and then we always have this possibility of exploiting others. People do that all the time. I mean, that's the nature of our modern world. Everybody else makes a living by, it's supposed to be fair, but there's the old saying, buyer beware. It's supposed to be fair, but if you're buying it, you have to be aware. If you're paying for it, you have to be aware of what you're paying for. Because the person selling it may not tell you all about it. They may not tell you it's got a defect. One time, we were trying to be devotees. We just wanted to help Srila Prabhupada. So one time, Vedanta Krit had to sell his Sankirtan vehicle, or the vehicle he was using, to make Lakshmi, to bring back Lakshmi for Srila Prabhupada. And naturally wanted to get the most money he could get for it. So back in those days, the vehicles, when it reached 100,000 miles, it wouldn't keep going. It would just turn over and start from zero again. So he had this van that had 40,000 miles on it, but it really had 140,000 miles on it. So he didn't have time to sell it, so he asked me to sell it. And our plan was that we were going to sell it as a vehicle that had 40,000 miles on it. We were going to say a little white lie. And we sold it like that. And later I felt so bad because these people were so nice. And they thought they were getting a pretty good deal. But if they knew it had 100,000 more miles on it, they would have wanted to pay less. So that's buyer beware. Why are there black markets in other countries, as well as in America? The whole drug industry, not the whole drug industry, but the black market drug industry, where you buy drugs on the street. Why are there black markets? The person may tell you you're getting this, and it's full of something else. And the people die because of it. So, buyer beware. It's the nature of the material world. They tell you one thing, this is what you need to do this job. You should get that. And you get it, and the thing, it isn't fit for the job you have to do. And they don't want to take it back. Oh, we'll take it, we'll give you this for it. Buyer beware. So the material world, there's always the possibility of being exploited, or ourselves exploiting someone, even unintentionally exploiting someone. So, that's just the nature of the material world. And the thing is, we accumulate bad karma for all those mistakes and all those illusions that we had, where we did all sorts of things wrong because we were believing something that wasn't right. With to speak of when we exploited others, even unintentionally. So all sorts of bad karma comes in this world. So Krishna, what the verse is recommending is to get out of this miserable world. We have to get out of the miserable cycle of working for fruit of results. Fruit of results means it's something I want, but it's not, doesn't fit perfectly into the plan of the Lord. It's not something the Lord is wanting. It's something we want. But the Lord is aloof from it. It's not His plan. It's not how he wants to engage us. It's what we want to do. And so consequently, it's our responsibility. It's not the Lord's responsibility, it's our responsibility. We want to do it. Why is the Lord responsible? It's what we want to do. The Lord's only responsible for what he wants to do. And the Lord's not afraid because it all comes from him. He's got it all perfectly under control, but it doesn't come from us, and we don't have it perfectly under control. How can we control the whole creation? We can't hardly control our own karma. It always comes back and bites us. We didn't want to be bitten, but we got bit. Why? Because we can't control everything. The Lord can control everything. But he doesn't control the living entities by forcing them to be good, bad, or any way. He doesn't force them to be his devotee. He doesn't force them to be pure devotees. He doesn't force people to be yogis. He doesn't force people to be karmis. He tries to teach them how to be. But then he has to let them be in order for them to learn to love. Because love has to be unconditional. If love is conditional, then it's not the type of love that is most pleasing. And Krishna wants the most pleasing love. So to train the living entities, he has to give them their freedom to learn pure love, unconditional love. And so that may take some time, just like cooking burfi takes some time. If you try to hurry it, you may burn it. It takes time. So to learn unconditional love takes time. So Krishna, he stays with the living entity in the conditioned state. But he stays, is only a witness. And he becomes in a vasa when we desire it. He's called Chaita Guru. He's the guru within the heart. And he's trying to direct us, but he will not interfere. Not that he cannot, but he will not interfere. He'll only, give a hint. He may give a bigger hint if somebody's really interested in him or is a devotee. He may even, wake us up, but he'll never stop us from doing what we want to do. Certainly the pure devotee, he's going to help more. In fact, for the pure devotee, even the material energy is wanting to serve the pure devotee. The pure devotee is not bound by by Durga or the jail keeper. He's not influenced by the miseries that she can inflict. Because he's just too busy serving Krishna, like Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur was beaten and beaten and beaten for chanting Krishna's name. But it didn't affect him because he was such a pure devotee. Most of his, would be just completely immersed in the pain of such a beating. But, Haridas could be naturally aloof from it because of his pure devotion. So, we are meant to gradually come to that stage. In the beginning, we don't have any faith, generally speaking. One may have had some attraction or just by the grace of some devotee, one got some prasadam, candy or something, some type of prasadam, or just heard the name and that begun their spiritual life. And then gradually, somehow ever, we come in contact with devotees, but what is our faith like? Do we have faith in Krishna or not? And if our faith is weak, that's only because we are beginning devotees. Most people in this world are beginning devotees. The Sankirtan movement is for helping people to become devotees. So those with faith, Their job is to help those whose faith is weak to build that faith up. And as we build our faith up, then it becomes easier to listen to Krishna, to take direction from Krishna, to give up fruitive work because we don't want to remain in the material world. We don't want to have to keep fulfilling material desires that ultimately, don't satisfy us. You work so hard and you get so little in the material world. Prabhupada gave the beautiful example, beautiful analogy that being in the material world is like a fish being out of the water. Somebody was just mentioning that in the class, but that was Prabhupada's famous analogy. I don't know where he heard it. I don't think he just made it up. He probably, it's probably there in the Shastra. But if, a fish out of water cannot be happy on land like a human being. Fish is going to ultimately die. So a spirit soul that's out of the devotional service of the Lord and is just engaged in fruitive work in the material world can never ultimately be satisfied because of birth, death, old age, disease, having to get the results of our work, sometimes good, other times bad, a lot of times just in the middle. It's not enough, but it's something. That's just the nature of the material world, But we're not meant to be here. If we want to stay here, that's what the world's for. Krishna made the world for us, to try to fulfill our desires. But we don't have to stay here. We can solve all the problems just by going back home to Godhead. But going back home to Godhead means we have to have some faith in Krishna. How can we have love for Krishna without faith in Krishna? So love for Krishna, devotional service, the result of loving Krishna is pure devotional service. And to have that, it begins with faith. We have to have faith in Krishna. So the practice of devotional service is how to develop our faith. The faith has to develop, has to become steady and strong. And then it has to become filled with pleasing emotions in Krishna's service. We have to have begin our taste of love for Krishna. And gradually it becomes pure love for Krishna, but that takes our time and trouble and practice. That's what life is all about on the road going back home to Godhead. Hridayananda Maharaj, he used to give the example of being in a bus and you're going somewhere. So when you're in that bus going somewhere, even though it may be a bumpy, tough ride, just like Daniel took a ride here from Kansas City and it took him almost 3 days. Just all kinds of problems. But you can tolerate it if you know you're going to get to your destination. You just got to keep holding on. You just got to keep tolerating them. Almost there. I'm getting there. If I wait and somehow ever I survive, I can get on the next bus and I can go further. So it's possible. So a devotee tolerates all the aches and pains in this world because we're on the bus going back home to Godhead. So if we can tolerate the pains of this world, then very soon we're going to be getting out of this world and problem solved. No more material body, no more aches and pains, no more having to worry about this, worry about that, no more having to worry about some other person, no longer having to worry about anything. Everything's solved because we took the trouble to go back home to Godhead. Whereas if we don't take the trouble to go back home to Godhead, then it's an unending quest to always try to fulfill our responsibilities, duties, and desires in this world. It just never ever comes to an end. And ultimately we can't control it. We may not want any of the bad karma, but we have to take the bad with the good. And there's just never getting out of it. Just like, we may not want the septic tank to back up, and the septic tank backs up. You try to keep care of it, you may be able to take care of it, but after all, it's only a hole in the ground that sometimes gets clogged up. And you have to take care of it. So, the living entity is like a fish out of water in this world. It's not ultimately going to be pleasing for us. So we just have to get on the bus going back home to Godhead. The spiritual master's the driver. He'll drive us back home. There may be all kinds of bumps, but, we just have to, be a faithful disciple, stick to the process, tolerate, our very own imperfections as well as the imperfections of others. Everybody in this world's got imperfections, or we wouldn't be here. And we all have to ride the bus back home, back to Godhead. And, work on building up our faith. Just like Lord Chaitanya said, oh my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love? Why don't I have tears of love when I hear Krishna's name? Why isn't my voice choking up with emotional ecstasy when I utter Krishna's name? Why aren't my hairs jumping on end? It's like sometimes you see a really good movie and, it just stirs all your emotions. So why isn't that happening when I'm chanting Krishna's name? It's simply because our faith isn't strong enough. Our love hasn't developed enough. So we have to keep working on that and working on it. Lord Chaitanya goes on to say it's because, basically he says, because we don't love Krishna enough. When we love Krishna enough, then it's very difficult to be separated from Krishna. So at that time our hairs will stand on end. So we just have to, build up our love for Krishna. And that's done through the practice of devotional service. And that practice begins by serving Krishna's pure devotee, or serving our spiritual master. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that's the process that he gives, and that's the process that he teaches. He himself comes to earth and accepts a spiritual master because he's teaching by example. Everyone needs a spiritual master. Without a spiritual master, who are you going to serve? Who can tell you what to do? Maybe they love you too much and they can't tell you what to do. So the spiritual master tells us what to do. And, and it's our duty to serve that person. So the spiritual master is driving the bus. And he may say, be quiet. He may say, I'm stopping here. Get the luggage out. We need to straighten it all up. He may turn the air conditioner on. He may turn the air conditioner off. He may turn the heater on. He may run out of gas. All right, somebody's got to walk to town and get the gas. All kinds of things happen in this world. To everyone. Devotees, non-devotees, everyone. Is in a predicament. So when we're on the bus going back home to Godhead, we're developing our love for Krishna to simply, leave the problems behind. And we have to, keep our mind fixed on that. That's what a yogi means. A yogi means that he's keeping his mind fixed on going back home to Godhead. Whereas when the mind becomes deviated and the mind's fixed on some material quest, then the yogi has now become a bogey because he's desiring to fulfill something in this world. So, we're all spirit souls. But the position we take, that is our choice. If we want to be a bogey in the material world, then
That's what the material world is all about. But there's millions and trillions and killions of bogies all competing for the same enjoyment. And it's all governed by the law of karma. It's a very tough situation, material world. We're like fish out of water. But when we're going back home to Godhead, then that means we have to keep out, we have to somehow keep the mind fixed on the destination. All right, I got to develop love for Krishna. I got to follow the spiritual master to develop my love for Krishna. I got to do my duties for Krishna. I got to make sure that I'm, renouncing all these desires for material sense gratification. Gee, big job, huge job, not an easy job. But it's not an easy job in the material world. We have to see what the result is. Just material result after material result. And at the end we die and we take another birth. Whereas when we stick it out despite all the difficulties. It's extremely difficult living in an ashram. It's extremely difficult renouncing material things and just trying to please Guru and Gauranga. There's so many difficulties, for us fools and rascals. It's only for the pure devotee is there no difficulty. So, but if we stick it out, then no more birth and death, no more old age and disease. Go back home to Godhead. So that's why, despite so many faults, devotees stick it out. Because we're on the bus going back to Godhead. And gradually we develop some faith, and it becomes a little bit easier to stick it out. Despite so many problems, devotees stick it out. Going back home to Godhead and continue to serve Guru and Gauranga. I mean, just look how hard Prabhupada's order is. Just one example. One example how hard it is. Don't leave ISKCON. How hard is that? That means now you're stuck in a certain society. Now if you belong to DAK, this fraternity, that fraternity, you can leave whenever you want. I mean, we can leave ISKCON whenever we want, but Prabhupada's order is stay within ISKCON. So that becomes very difficult. All of a sudden, you got all these people governing you. I mean, even for a spiritual master. Like, let's say Tamal Krishna, for instance. He had Shakti. He had disciples. He could have a following wherever he wanted. He didn't have to stay in ISKCON to have disciples. They have a following to lead people. He could leave at any time and have his own society. But he stayed within ISKCON despite the troubles and despite even being chastised. Being told, you can't initiate any disciples now. We don't like what you did. This wasn't right. That didn't please Prabhupada. He had to bite his tongue and try to be a good devotee in the society. And that happens to all of us. That's the thing. When you're part of a society, that means that sometimes somebody's going to notice something that's not right. And they're going to say something. And everybody has to be humble, because that's what a devotee, has to do. And at the same time, do your job. So I got to end before it gets too late here. And so I'm just going to abruptly close the class right now. And before I forget, I need to tell Krishna Shraya that you need to come get that title from me, because the system is whomever the vehicle's name is going in, they have to go there and do it and show a picture ID. Right. So if it was going in my name, like most of the ones that I take down there, there's no problem. I can go down there and pay somebody's taxes for them, but to change a vehicle is different. It's not going in my name, despite, I was the notary. That doesn't matter. Right. The person who has bought it, whose name it's going in, they have to be there. They have to submit it, and they have to submit their picture ID. And then they can do the thing.
That's the same place you get your driver's license?
No. No, it's the
Oh,
substation.
I know it's by the.
You can either go to Bay
emergency-
St. Louis to the tax office,
Or the
or
emergency
there's a
response.
substation.
Is that the emergency response?
It's at
Yeah.
the emergency place. When you go to the end of 603 and the big electric company's right in front of you, instead of going right to the kill,
Right.
in Bay St. Louis, you go left.
Where
It'll
you
be on
get-
the left-hand side of the
Where you
road.
get your tag.
It's one of those places that they build for the storms,
Yeah.
where the county administrators and different emergency workers can all
Yeah.
take shelter.
Yeah.
So there's a substation there for collecting taxes.
Yeah, we know.
So you just go there and you bring it in and you pay them the money. Like I said, I think it'll only be like $30, something like that.
All right.
And they'll give you a temporary slip, and they'll give you a license plate. And you don't give them a license plate; that has to be given to the previous owner.
Right.
And then they'll send it all into Jackson, and eventually in the mail you'll get the real live title.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for the class.
Thank you very much.
All right. I'm sorry if I just kept going over the same stuff.
Mine, we have an appointment we're worried about. So you can try to do this today?
Oh God, I got an appointment at 9 o'clock too.
Okay, maybe we can do this a different day with the title. Doesn't have.